What's going on, Tamers? Welcome to another DigiGuard United video, and today we have something a little different for you. As far as I'm concerned, for me, we're going over staples, and not just any staples as you can see on the screen here. We're going over white staples. Now, what I define as a staple is a card that has many applications over the course of a game. It's not specifically archetype locked or a specific strategy. It's more splashable than anything. Even though it might look like on paper it belongs to a specific strategy, it could be used in others. So there's a couple of cards I'd like to go over because I think if you don't have these cards, you should probably get them. And I've pulled up TCG Player so you guys can see the pricing and stuff like that. Some of these cards are a little pricey in my opinion. Some of them are dirt cheap, so it shouldn't be too difficult to get a hold of these. But without further ado, let's get right into it. And as you can see, the first card we're going to go over is this Menace himself, Ukemon. This card's very good. It's added a lot of flexibility to more type of rush strategies, giving you that 12th rookie for more consistency, being able to promote gain memory and giving you an extra hatching phase or breeding phase. It's something that hasn't really happened in the game as of yet, and it does help to accelerate. So for you aggro players, red hybrid, armor, this is definitely a good rookie to have because it does help facilitate more aggressive strategies, more low to the ground strategies, yes, but definitely more aggression and just speed up a game that's resource based and allows you to just kind of funnel through and just create some really fun board states. So Ukemon is definitely a card that I would definitely pick up if you can. Now there are two versions. There's the Ukemon that you got from the trial decks, which it was either at a Comic-Con or if you got them in your stores during a pre-release, or if you were lucky enough to go and see the movie in theaters and pulled some from your theater packs. That one is a promo foil. It's a lot more expensive. I mean, $6 for essentially a common card or a non-foil card's a lot of money, and you probably need 4 of these, so you're probably going to run you $25 for a playset, but it's definitely a very good card, very flexible and very splashable in a lot of different decks. So I would definitely try to pick these up as soon as you can. On to the next card, Sistermom Blanc. So this came in the Jessamon starter deck. As you can see, it's dirt cheap. It's $1. You could probably get a playset through a bin, what's it called? A bulk bin at your locals, or maybe your friends just have these lying around. I have tons of these. The reason I think this is a white staple is because, yes, it does have Decoy Black specifically for Royal Knight or Huckmon or Jessamon, but its on-play is just really good. It's an on-play for 3, discard 1, draw 2. So it's a +1. You're getting a 3K rookie beater. It's not terrible. I mean, if there's cards that need to be in the trash, like if you're playing purple or if you're playing a deck that utilizes the graveyard or the trash as another resource, this is definitely a card you want to get your hands on. It's super cheap. It's really good for cycling. There's not a lot of shuffling interactions in Digimon, so you need to draw your cards when you need to. And it's just another way of mitigating that draw power. And it does give you a 3K beat stick on a rookie. That's all she's going to do, though. There's no Digivolution either on an egg. There's no climbing up the stack. If you're playing some weird deck where you have the decoy targets, by all means, but for the most part, this is just an on-play, trash 1, draw 2. On to the next one. This is Chimeramon from BT8. So this card is definitely a little bit more pricey. It's essentially a $10 super rare, but it's a really good card. BT8 was the first set that introduced DNA Digivolution to us in conjunction with the starter decks that we got. And Chimeramon is just one of those cards. It's just really good. Two champions, any color, DNA Digivolution on suspension. It's essentially a new Digimon, so it's reinstating all your inheritables. Just gives you that swing for game if you really need it. I mean, this card's really good, and this is one of those cards that as the game progresses, it's only going to get better with all the champions and stuff that we might get, especially multicolor strategies. It's a really good card. It's very strong. It is pricey. A playset's going to run you about $40-50 with shipping. And obviously there's alternate arts and stuff that are even more expensive, but this is definitely a card you might want to add to your collection. This is probably one of the more expensive cards, probably the second most expensive card on this list. So, I mean, you could always piece this together little by little. You don't essentially have to buy 4 right off the rip because you're not going to play 4 in a deck. Maybe it's a 1 or 2 of, but I would definitely consider picking this card up before it gets pricier as sets, are released. Our first Omnimon that's hitting the list, there's a couple of these guys, is Omnimon's Wart. Now, the way I constructed this list is the cheapest version of the card possible. And so you're going to see a lot of this Resurgence Booster reprints on here. It's a 22-cent foil. I mean, you could probably pick up the original SR for cheap as well. But if you're like me and you want to try to get the cheapest copy available, you want to go ahead and go through Resurgence Booster. Resurgence Booster, just a little side note here, was a really good set for newer players who came into the game later and didn't have a lot of the older staples. I really enjoyed that set. Yes, the pull rates were atrocious and I'm sitting on thousands of memory boosts that I don't really need, but I was able to get a lot of the cards that I missed out on because I came into the game a lot later. So Omnimon's Wart, I think, is one of those white staples that you probably should pick up a set just to have it, because you never know what applications are going to come across the table where this card can benefit from it. Yes, it's a hefty Digivolution cost of 6 over a purple or a black, but there's a lot of different shenanigans you could do with this guy, playing stuff out of your trash for recursion, and just, setting up a bigger board state if you need to. But again, it's not a terrible card, and it's not a bad one to add into your collection. Omnimon's Wart Defeat. Now, I know this card, you see that price tag on there. This also was reprinted in Resurgence Booster, but it's actually more expensive in Resurgence Booster. It's $15.28 here as the lowest on TCG Player. A Resurgence Booster copy lowest is $16.99, so it's an extra $1.50 plus shipping, depending on how you slice it. But this is definitely a good card to pick up. It's got a really good security effect. It was a meta staple for a while. I still think there's a world where this card is good to play simply because of the Digivolution cost. You're Digivolving for 3 over a level 6 black or purple Digimon. It's a 13k level 7 Digimon. That's the smallest Digivolution cost for a level 7 in the game, I believe. That's not black box texted. So this is something that you might want to consider picking up now. Yeah, it's a little hefty. You're talking about $60 for a playset. Yeah, $60 for a playset. But like I said, these are cards that you can pick up and add to your collection over time. If you might get lucky in a trade or something, it's definitely one of those cards that it is older, but it is definitely beneficial for you to have it in your collection binder in case something were to come across the board. I know the OmniZoo decks are playing this card again, so it's definitely made a resurgence, but it's something that I think is worth picking up in my opinion. We have Blitz Omni. Again, you're seeing a Resurgence Booster reprint. Blitz Omni, in my opinion, is the best Omnimon in the game. Blitz for game, Digivolution cost of 4 over a red or a blue. It just gives you that extra swing when you need it. Does have built-in protection if it ever gets there. And you can set up some wonky inheritables here, depending on what deck you're playing with, like Reboot and Blocker and all that. So, definitely a card you want to pick up. Even the original printing is only like $1 or $2, but again, we're trying to go for the lowest cost possible. You could definitely benefit from picking up some Blitz Omnis because there's a lot of decks that you can squeeze this in just to get you that last swing for game if you really need to do so with the Blitz mechanic. Omnimon X Antibody. So this is the original X Antibody that came out in BT5, I believe, but this is the Resurgence Booster reprint. Again, it's pretty cheap, but this is a really good card. It's definitely one of those cards that you want to just have in your collection. Omnimon is such a cool Digimon. It's probably like the poster child for like super powered Digimon in the franchise. There's a couple of them you could probably talk about. They all happen to be Royal Knights apparently, but Omnimon is just that dude. Like if you were sitting at home watching, cartoons and stuff, if you got to watch the reboot of the anime in 2020, you got to see Omnimon really early on. If you're like a true hardcore Digimon fan and you watched the Digimon movie from the year 2000, or you watched our war game with Japanese with English subtitles, you are definitely an Omnimon fan, just because his impact into the his impact of introduction was really cool the way they did it. So it's definitely one of those cards, and it's really good. This is one of the cards this is the only card in the game actually that just says no to an attack. So just by trashing 2 sources, you can go ahead and just stop the attack. I believe when attacking, effects still trigger because your opponent is turn player and they have priority. But that's something you might want to look into. But if you're just looking to not die, this is definitely a good card to have, in my opinion. Omnimon X Antibody. This is BT10. This guy is crazy. His artwork is awesome. There is a reprinted version of him from an errata pack. That's non-foil, but I don't know why you'd want that one. Just get the nice shiny one, right? Not too bad. It's about $2, with shipping. But it's a really good card. A lot of X Antibody strategies are very popular, whether it's Melga or Greymon. And it does have a reduction of Digivolution over an Omnimon for 3 with the black box text. So if you want to go ahead and swing with an Omnimon, if you tuck an X Antibody before doing so, you can go ahead, Digivolve into this guy, look at your opponent's security, rip one out, and then swing for game if they had one. Or just kind of give you another turn. It also does have spot removal when it comes into play, which is really nice as well. It's just a really good card. A lot of these Omnimons are really good. You know, there's a lot of them to choose from, but that's why we call them staples, right? These are cards that you probably need to have and should have in your collection, just in case. A lot of these are red-blue tailored, but there's a couple of them that are, you know, I believe there's an Omnimon for every color. You know, we got red, blue, we definitely have yellow, green, we definitely have purple. Yeah, so there's definitely an Omnimon for every color. I would just pick these up when you can. You never know when these are going to go up, or, you know, some kind of weird, you know, interaction that makes these cards go up. But this is definitely a good investment, in my opinion. The last Omnimon on the list, I promise, is Merciful Mode. This is my favorite Omnimon, just because of the implications it had with Digimon Tri. I was a big fan of Tri, even though there's controversial probably. It is a little more on the pricey side. You're, you know, $5, just that's $20 for a playset, but it's just a really good card. It does cost a lot to Digivolve. Does have the black box text over an Omnimon, but for the most part, you're Digivolving this for 6 over your Mega, passing turn, and then basically resetting your opponent's trash and killing something on their board. And then when the turn comes back to you, eventually, you're going to go ahead, essentially remove him from the top of your stack and trash one of your opponent's security. So just a really good card, 15k body. It is a security bomb. Just a nice, flavorful Omnimon. I love the artwork on it. The alternate art is also really pretty too, but obviously we're trying to go for least expensive versions possible. This is definitely something that you want to add into your collection, especially if you're a big Omnimon fan. But the other thing too is if you're looking for your top end for your deck that you don't have, you know, if you're playing a yellow deck and you don't really have a top end, I mean, at this point you would, because there's a lot of options right now. This is a good one. It's a very good meta call right now. There's a lot of decks that utilize their trash as a secondary resource, and Omnimon Merciful Mode is one of the few cards that interacts with the trash that way. So we're going to go ahead and move out of the Omnimon category here and go into some options. Win rate 60%. This is a very old card from EX1. It's dirt cheap. Basically, this is Digivolution reduction in a way. You're playing this for 2 and discarding a card from your hand of the chosen color, and then your next Digivolution, as long as the colors match, you're reducing it by 4. So it's kind of like a watered down version of HPD, but reducing Digivolution by 4 is nice, but obviously, you know, in essence, it's just reducing it by 2 because you're playing win rate for 2. But there are a lot of megas that are, you know, 4 to Digivolve and higher, you know, so if you want to keep turn and do this just for a card in your hand, just to pitch it, to go ahead and meet that requirement and go ahead and Digivolve without having to worry about Digivolving and passing turnover. Excuse me. There could be some applications for this card in the future. Staples are essentially cards that can mature with the game and get not better, but get more play because of cards that have come out, like because of power creep. So there's always going to be just like older cards that are applicable in the future down the road, and I think win rate is definitely one of them. And then these two guys. Okay, so X Antibody. This is a $3 uncommon from BT9, which is crazy. This card is busted. Add a security, it gains you 1 memory, you add it to your hand, so it does kind of affect your opponent's turn in a way. But if you're playing X Antibody strategies, which was very popular in BT9 format, you know what this card does. It's not once per turn, which I feel terrible admitting that I learned recently it wasn't once per turn. I always thought it was once per turn, and I thought it was a very fair and balanced card. But now that it's not once per turn, it definitely makes it a little bit broken, because you can go ahead and Digivolve up into your X stacks a lot faster, especially if you're playing like Melga, which is a deck that has multiple swings, and you can go ahead and climb your ladder a lot sooner. It's just a really good card. It can't be stripped, so it kind of shits on blue hybrid or any type of source strip decks that strip from the bottom up as opposed to targeted source strip, which is, you know, we're seeing a lot of now and is very powerful, and I'm glad they added that into the game. But yeah, this is just a really good card. I mean, X Antibody is just really good, you know, at what they do. There's really not much else for me to say, except for definitely pick this card up if you can. And then the last option that we're going to go over here is Protoform. Protoform is one of my favorite cards. I love this card. I think it's so beautifully designed. It's just so good at what it does. It is super expensive because it is a super rare from a set that was not opened a lot. And it's also got a lot of meta applications. There's a lot of decks that play this card. You know, your Numemon decks play this. I think Fenrir-Lugumon's starting to play this card, or maybe it has been playing this card. I know Magnamon decks are playing this card. It's just a very good card. Does give you pseudo recovery, adds to your hand out of security, and also kind of goes back into security so you can keep looping it. You're never going to really lose this card once you have it in your hand. Like if it's in your trash, yeah, you're not going to get it. But if you check it out of security, it goes into your hand. If you play it and you tuck it as a source, you're just going to continue the cycle. So it's just the perfect design for a one of, in my opinion. I really do like this card. Yeah, it's going to run you $60 for a playset. I don't necessarily think you need a playset. So if you're trying to build with a budget, is what I call it, you could just pick up one for now, and maybe down the road, if you want to grab another one, you can go ahead and do so. And then the last section of this video, we're going to go over some Tamers. Now, my boy Jeni, he's not very heavily played, but I do think he's a really good card. Not so much for the searching aspect of it. It is a non-play for 3 that basically reveals the top 5 cards of your deck. You can add a rookie and one non-white Tamer, so it's really good to grab pieces. I like it for the opponent's turn effect. Basically, when your opponent attacks with an ultimate or higher, level 5 or higher, you can go ahead, suspend him, and move your Digimon out of your breeding area onto the battlefield. So if you're playing aces, essentially, if you have a stack ready to go in raising, you can go ahead and trigger Jeni to move up and then go ahead and blast Digivolve in the same sequence there, because there's no checkpoint from where they attack to where Jeni resolves, where you miss timing on Blast Evo. It is really nifty. I know some Deva players were using this card. I wonder if they still are, but I could definitely see applications where this could be very beneficial, especially moving from breeding into play and going ahead and turning on your Blast Digivolution mechanic. This guy is super cheap. Pick up a playset. Why not? Digimon Emperor. This is an older Tamer from BT8. It's seeing a little bit of a resurgence now because of all these Ukamon decks running around, but I liked this card when it first came out. I just didn't feel like it was necessary to play it. Basically, what it does is... excuse me. A little tickle in my throat there. Basically, what it does is when your opponent promotes a level 3 from their breeding area, they lose 2 memory. So they have to play around it, and if a Digimon stack were to die on your opponent's side of the field... level 5 or lower, you could suspend a draw card. You're not going to get too much of the draw power going. This is more for that memory control, but it is a really good card, and these do stack. So just think about a world where you have 2 Digimon Emperors on a board, your opponent goes and tries to promote a rookie, they're going to lose 4 memory. That might switch turnover. So cards like this, like we talked about earlier in the video, as the game evolves, progresses, and gets newer, more powerful cards, these are things that you have to keep your eye on because they might have applications with newer cards, even though it is an older set. We're going into BT16 now. This card is 8 sets old. This is one of the first cards I got when I started playing the game, which is like 2 years ago now. So it's funny how time works, but this is definitely something that you might want to look into adding, and it's dirt cheap. $1 for a playset? Come on, that's what I'm talking about. Louis Iwata. So I love this card. I'm a big fan of Louis for game. It's like hybrid for game light, but you could do it a lot sooner and you don't lose your Tamer. So I always thought this was a better version of hybrid for game in decks that can't necessarily play hybrids. But again, this is one of those O2, the beginning promo decks. You can get it in there, or you can get it in the promo pack from the movie, which is obviously going to be a little bit more pricey. But I do like Louis. I think it's a really good card. I think the design is very nice. Being a 3-cost Tamer is probably where it should be, because you are gaining a memory when you do raise out of your breeding. And it is something that could be stacked. So that's something you got to pay attention to. If you have multiple Louis on the board, you want to be able to use them as much as you can. That's why it's nice to have him as opposed to a hybrid, because you're not giving up your Tamer. So these can be used in any deck. In combination with Ukamon is really nice because you're gaining 2 memory and hatching again, and you can just go ahead and just loop and continue to punish your opponent by staying low to the ground and being as aggressive as possible. So again, this card might be a little more difficult to get your hands on, like if you're just looking for it. Obviously, TCG Player is a great resource to go ahead and purchase any singles. Yeah, I mean, I would go ahead and pick up a set of Louis. I mean, this is a card that you definitely want to have in your collection, especially down the road if something were to come up. I know there's a lot of Ukamon stuff getting printed, and I think there's a Memory Tamer Louis coming in set 16 in BT16, if I'm not mistaken. So keep an eye out for that. The coolest of boys. BT9, again, was just a crazy set. A $4 rare is kind of gross. I mean, you're talking about $20 or $16 to $20 for a playset with shipping. But this card is cracked. I mean, a 2-cost white Tamer is disgusting. On play, reveal top 3, add a Digimon card with X Antibody in its traits and 1 X Antibody option. So, ultimate value, you're adding 2, and you're gaining your set, essentially your Tamer that gets the ball going. Because every time you climb up into an X Digivolution, you can suspend a draw 1 and gain a memory. So it essentially nets you. It's essentially a +2 off of an X Digivolution that's a free Digivolution. So if you're going into your rookies or your champions, and some of your ultimates are free too, you're going to go ahead and gain a memory, so it's net positive, and then draw a card. So you're plussing 2 there, which is insane. Also, searching in Digimon is very important because we don't have tutors that just say, go grab X. It's always reveal X and add, or reveal X and bottom deck the rest. So being able to have searching in Digimon is very important in my opinion. And it's something that is always going to be viable as X Antibody cards continue to get printed. And the last card on our white staples list is Analog Youth, another card from EX1. Shout out to Digimon World 1. It's a $6 damage foil. I mean, that doesn't really mean anything. It's basically an $8 card here with shipping. So it's like $7.50 for a near mint copy. But this card's just really good. I mean, again, another 2-cost white Tamer on play. Reveal the top 3, add 1 Digimon card, trash the rest. And then if a level 5 or higher Digimon with sources dies, you can suspend a hatch and gain a memory. So it's really nice. I know a lot of Fenrir players are playing this card. Purple is just really synergistic with Analog Youth because it wants stuff in the trash. It's always going to kill for on deletions and just net you memory, net you breeding. It's just a really good card. It's another cheap searcher if you need to play a Tamer, just to have, ways of grabbing your pieces and filling your trash for late game state. But, I mean, Analog Youth is just a really good card. There's a lot of bangers in the EX1 set, too. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the artwork. I do appreciate the shout out to Hyper Coliseum. Was it Hyper Coliseum? I think that was the name of the first card game, Hyper Coliseum. I do appreciate like the homage to that type of art style, but it just doesn't mesh. Like the art in Digimon is so good. Sometimes the EX1 like framework doesn't really like mesh well with it. But again, I do appreciate the callback to the original card game. But this guy is just really good. There's always conversations about putting him on a restricted list when that, comes across the table. So, yeah, I mean, have at it. I mean, this is kind of like the list that we finalized here as a group. I think all of these cards are worth getting and picking up as soon as you can before they start to fluctuate, because whatever's popular in the meta, if there's any relation to the cards that we just talked about, that's what's going to skyrocket the prices and generate revenue for TCG player or for a store that's selling these cards. So go ahead and try to pick them up as soon as you can. Yeah, I mean, let me know in the comment section down below if you feel like we missed any white staples, if you feel like we missed any cards that should have been in this list, or if there was cards on this list that should not have been considered staples. But I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.